Hello again, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic. Not a lot left on it here, but there is a blizzard warning out for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. That stays out until 10 p.m. this evening. They've had winds gusting 40 to 60 miles per hour with whiteout conditions and blowing snow there. And winter weather advisory back to the west there along the eastern coast, Prudhoe Bay, Deadhorse, and those areas. That's for winds 40 miles an hour, gusts, and visibilities under half a mile at times there. And that's also out until 10 p.m. this evening, and then conditions have improved quite a bit after that time and into tomorrow. Wind advisory continues until 6 a.m. Tuesday for the passes of the eastern Alaska range. For occasional winds, or winds occasionally at times, possibly continuing to gust to 50 miles per hour. And moving on to satellite imagery, still have this north to south flow of moisture, but you can see it's really cutting off down here. It's sort of losing the source. Still a lot of rain up along the North Gulf Coast today, but the heavier rains they saw over the northern panhandle, like Haines and Skagway, and over into Glacier Bay of a couple inches, has really tapered off this afternoon. In fact, you can see the clouds clearing out as a big area of high pressure builds and expands northwestward, with the center over western Canada and those southeast winds pushing that back to the west here, continues to funnel it into the interior, but not much in the way of any significant precipitation getting past the coast range, actually, other than some light showers for rain or snow, but a pretty thick cloud shield there. Was some clearing up over the upper Yukon Valley today, and some places got into the 50s, like Chuck-Yitzhak had 55 this afternoon. Otherwise, the sunshine here over the southeast coast resulted in temperatures quite warm. AKwx this afternoon is 65 degrees, and some other 60s down there around that area there, but AKwx was the warmest one I could see. By contrast, colder temperatures back here to the west, with snow ending here over Bristol Bay, King Salmon, after getting several inches yesterday and overnight. That's tapering off, kind of shifting up here to the north, areas of light snow to the north here, but starting to break out along the Yukon coast, or the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, especially the Kuskokwim Delta down into Togiak Bay. So a lot of clouds here right along the Yukon Delta coast. Out in the Bering Sea, kind of a chilly air mass and isolated snow showers. We've got a system down here to the south that's just grazing the area there with possible little bit of moisture. Didn't really see too much today. Most everything, the wind and the precipitation to the south. Just some scattered rain and snow showers, Adak, Atka, and then snow showers scattered around the Shimei and Attu area. Got high pressure starting to develop here. It's not all that strong. It's 1,008 millibars, really just a lack of storminess rather than an actual high pressure area, but there is colder air associated with it. And this is the boundary between the warmer air here to the east and that colder air, and areas of snow and snow showers with the blowing snow. Again, winds gusting as high as 60 miles per hour on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast out of the east, but much lighter winds in areas of snow southward in toward this low center, which is pulling northward slowly and mixes to mostly rain. Kenai Peninsula, North Gulf Coast, still some pretty good moderate amounts of rain going, but this band really narrowing out. And for tonight, that continues to narrow and sets up just west of Yakutat. Still a band between Cape Yakataga and Yakutat of moderate to heavy precipitation. Some of that spilling into the southeastern Copper River Basin, Wrangell Mountains, and some showers back, or becomes more showery back into the Kenai Peninsula. Got this trough out here to the west that's going to kind of scoot up to the northeast, along with this low center that tracks up into the east central interior tonight. And that'll bring a chance of a likely chance of some precipitation across northern Cook Inlet, Matanuska-Susitna Valley as it does, but it'll be quite light. Otherwise, look for skies to clear out over Kodiak Island. Clearing here continues along the coast and partly sunny. Clear skies at St. Paul this afternoon, and that shouldn't change too much. Maybe some clouds coming in, but winds will be light and dry conditions dry. Still a chance of some flurries up around St. Lawrence Island. And this system staying to the south here of the Fox Islands, just a slight chance of some moisture with that. But thing out here to the west keeps some snow showers going for Adak and Atka, rain or snow showers. Kind of a ridge right through here developing, and then some more snow showers back with another very weak system over the far western Bering, and then areas of light snow here through the central and western interior areas. Back up along the Brooks Range, you noticed winds gradient just about gone on the Arctic coast there, so a significant improvement after midnight and in toward morning tomorrow. And then that gets replaced, another trough kind of swings in there, so links up with that moisture, actually that low center pulling off to the northeast, another trough they link up. So you got some light snow, pretty widespread light snow and fog, lower visibilities from the Brooks Range on out to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, but winds will be light, like 5 to 15 miles an hour. High pressure building in, centered over the interior here. Mostly sunny skies, Tanana Valley from the Koyukuk-Kobuk areas right on down into the lower and mid-Yukon River valleys, including Bristol Bay. And Cook Inlets could possibly see some clearing, and also St. Lawrence Island. Pick up the chance of some scattered isolated snow showers from the Pribilofs on down into the central Aleutian areas. Little breezy there, but nothing too serious here. Northeast winds, maybe gusts 30 at the most 35 miles an hour in the windier areas there. And dry over the western Aleutians. The next system still way out there by Kamchatka Peninsula. High pressure dominating the panhandle of western Canada, and skies will be clear well off the coast. So sunshine temperatures 50s to probably mid 60s again, if not warmer than that in some locations. And that's pushing this front now back to the west. Now it's a warm front, slowly edging westward here. That's going to keep Prince William Sound in cloudy skies and periods of lighter rain, and maybe some showers up into Valdez and Thompson Pass, but that's about it. And then we'll see on the forecast for Wednesday, low center here pulls up into the Aleutian Range there just east of King Salmon. Another front here rotates up, and that's going to actually shove some clouds and rain chances back into the southeast coast, mostly on the central and north coast. Less of that to the south. Moderate amounts of rain again returning to the North Gulf Coast here. Rainy day in store for Kodiak, and areas of rain or snow out here to the west and along this trough axis. Pretty gusty northeast winds developing now with higher pressure over the Russian Far East trying to build eastward here. So look for winds. That looks good for gusts to 40 miles an hour, maybe 45 miles an hour from the Yukon Delta on out to Nunivak Island. Same thing wrapping down into the Aleutians there, with snow showers and the next front bringing some light rain or snow into the western Aleutians. Lows in the Arctic coast tonight anywhere from 5 to 15 below, otherwise 25 to 35 above over the eastern interior, 40s in the Panhandle. And the highs tomorrow, 55 to 65 for the southeast coast. Cooler up over the eastern interior, lower 40 south central Alaska, a little above zero for the Arctic coast. Lows the following morning, lower 20s for the Pribilofs, a little above zero there for St. Lawrence Island, and 10 to 15 below here on the western Beaufort Sea coast, and call it 5 to 15 below on the east side. Above freezing southern Alaska, 40s in the Panhandle, highs 50s to near 60 for the southeast coast, and staying below zero on the Arctic coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving into flying weather, weather depiction chart here, or the flying graphic. Marginal VFR, again, pretty widespread out here over the Bering Sea. The only IFR is just south of Unmak Island there, with some VFR out to the west. Kodiak Island, kind of either way there, marginal to VFR tomorrow morning. IFR up continuing here, but narrowing up along the eastern North Gulf Coast there. IFR, central interior, on up across the upper Yukon Valley into the Brooks Range, but VFR here in the west, and VFR for the Panhandle. Could be a little bit of marginal to IFR early on there, but that's going to be gone by tomorrow afternoon. That's just some low stuff in there fog, low clouds, that sort of thing. But VFR there right up to Yakutat, almost to Cordova, and that area slipping back to the west here, so increasing IFR, Montague Island, southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula. VFR Cook Inlet, much in the interior VFR, some lower conditions up in the northeast and some scattered marginal stuff in the west. But off the coast and along VFR, Bering Strait, Seward Peninsula, not quite to the Pribilofs, otherwise marginal for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And for Wednesday morning, IFR here over the eastern interior, narrow band of marginal VFR westward out to the Seward Peninsula and Kotzebue Sound area. Otherwise not too bad here, some marginal VFR up into the Alaska Range, possibly even north of there. IFR now, Kodiak Island, another batch of moisture coming northward here, so that'll begin to spread into southern Cook Inlet in the morning hours. VFR for the Panhandle in the Eastern Gulf and Yakutat, southeastern Copper River Basin. That'll continue through the afternoon Wednesday. Got some moisture increasing, IFR slipping on up here into the southeast interior, western Prince William Sound, across the Talkeetnas, right up to the Alaska Range. Otherwise, back to the west, to the north, good VFR, and marginal for Kodiak Island. VFR getting pretty widespread out here over the Bering Sea, even through the Bering Strait there, the Arctic coast, and down into the west central Aleutians. Pretty marginal, though, from Atka to Dutch Harbor. And for passes tomorrow, Anatuvik, IFR, same forecast for Adigan. Their IFR conditions pretty much the entire day. Lake Clark and Merrill starting out marginal early on, then becoming VFR quite rapidly, probably by mid or to late morning at the latest. And same forecast for rainy. May take a little longer there to go VFR, but improving, and windy, occasionally marginal. And for Isabel, IFR becoming VFR. And for Mentasta, kind of a marginal VFR day the entire afternoon, morning and afternoon for the day Tuesday. Tonito, VFR, and Portage starting out IFR and improving quite rapidly once it gets going. Should become VFR by early afternoon, if not then by evening. And for Chilcoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, warm air here building over western Canada with that upper level ridge and that persistent southerly flow becoming more southeasterly now. So we've got 8 to 10,000 foot freezing levels here over this Panhandle. 2,000 feet up into the eastern interior there, upper Tanana Valley right up to the southern slopes of the Brooks Range, 4,000 feet over the Yukon. Cooler air back here to the west at the surface, right down into Cook Inlet tomorrow morning, and south and east of Kodiak Island, north of the central Aleutians, but still south of the Pribilofs. And for icing, a lot lighter now, just a narrow band. That weakening flow of moisture keeps a chance of considerable moderate, just a slight chance, or more likely to be light rime here in this zone, eastern North Gulf Coast, maybe spilling in the Copper River Basin. Some icing threats up there over the eastern North Slope and Arctic coast, and this stuff here just toying with the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. And for the jet stream, big upper ridge here building over western Canada there, and southeast flow going for this system here driving in toward California. So the flow turning southeasterly instead of that south to north flow, and that's going to cut the moisture off, at least for the time being. 110 knots there into the southeast interior, and this jet southwest at about 60 knots there. Got a trough coming in now, kind of cool it down a little bit over the central eastern interior tomorrow from what you've been. 9,000 feet southeast, 40 to 45 along and off the coast, 50 knots there over the eastern interior, and for 3,000 feet looking like this, 20 to 30 here out over the Aleutians, light in the interior, and the Panhandle 40 knots right off the coast. Moderate chop there for the Panhandle and areas of the interior.
Technology. It's the rhythm of our everyday life. We're more dependent on satellite and communication systems than at any other time in history. Disruptions can affect our economy and even our safety. To prepare for the effects of such events and minimize impacts, we need to look outside our atmosphere, some 93 million miles away, at a star we call the Sun. It's our main energy source. It warms the earth and grows our food. While the sun and the space between may seem pleasant from our perspective, it's anything but peaceful. At its surface exists a chaotic state of eruptions and radiation. And unlike Vegas, what happens at the sun doesn't stay at the sun.
Space weather is essentially emissions from the sun, radiation, magnetic field that erupts from the solar surface, pumped out into space, sometimes right towards Earth. When it impacts the Earth, it impacts our technology. That's what we call space weather.
These solar events and their effects at Earth can disrupt systems we take for granted. From causing blackouts to the power grid, to delaying offshore drilling operations due to inaccurate GPS data. Interference with communication systems can force air traffic to reroute and impact rescue response and coordination. Outside our atmosphere, solar radiation can harm astronauts and the systems they depend on. The good news is that these eruptions can be detected early. Forecasters at the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center in Boulder, Colorado, have their eyes on the sun at all times.
The Space Weather Prediction Center is part of the National Weather Service and is very much like a normal weather forecast office. We're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're looking at data, we're looking at imagery, we're looking at model outputs. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches of imminent activity to our customers so they can take action.
In many ways, forecasting space weather is a lot like forecasting hurricanes. Those who rely on space weather forecasts, like electric power grid managers, are informed early on and can begin taking protective action.
When we see an eruption on the sun, space weather forecasters will issue a watch. This is much like a hurricane watch. When a hurricane sits offshore of Miami, for example, perhaps 48 hours out, we too can see way in advance that something may be coming towards the Earth.
As the storm moves toward us, it hits a monitoring spacecraft orbiting 1 million miles away from Earth.
It's kind of our buoy sitting out there offshore, and that hurricane about 30, 45 minutes before it makes landfall, we'll get the measurements from the buoy. That's what this spacecraft does for us. That big eruption that left the sun hits the spacecraft. Now we've got the measurements of exactly what's going to impact us here on Earth, and we issue the warnings to give the power grid a heads up that the storm is now imminent. An interesting element to this whole process is that when the forecasters issue the alert, the power grid receives the alert, takes the necessary actions to protect the grid, and the average citizen never knows anything ever happened.
The number of customers who rely on space weather information continues to grow. As our reliance on technology increases, so will our need for constant monitoring of the sun.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
GPS has changed society. Most people don't realize how remarkable and how many different applications there are.
The GPS has become an integral part, not just of our daily lives as far as cell phones and guidance for our cars and mapping, but the whole system in agriculture is really relying heavily on high accuracy GPS.
So they're using GPS to plant those seeds with centimeter accuracy. And then they can come behind it and irrigate and fertilize right where that seed is with that 1 centimeter accuracy.
The GPS creates a line for the operator that he can steer along, or you go to another level and the operator doesn't steer anymore and the tractor has an automatic steering system on it, much like a cruise control on a car, except for when I push the button it doesn't drive a set speed. When I push a button it stays on a predefined line.
You don't even need lights. You can do it at nighttime. You program your GPS and it's driving that tractor for you. So it's huge, and it's changing the way that the farmers farm the fields.
6 or 7 days out.
There's an interest in GPS applications from space weather side because when the sun is eruptive, it causes GPS to falter, and in some cases it doesn't work at all.
Productivity may suffer to a certain degree in that there's no way that I as a human being can steer as good 8 hours a day as a GPS system is going to do. It's going to be the same all day long. Some of the other application technologies, those are going to be gone. We're not going to have the ability to do good section control on sprayers and planters and fertilizer applicators without GPS.
We see a huge growing customer base in so many different industries, so many different sectors now relying on GPS and high precision GPS. They're all big customers for us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Today's sea ice analysis, really not showing much different from yesterday, just kind of a gradual expansion of the ice over through here and in Norton Sound, icing over again, and a little bit down here in toward Kuskokwim Bay. And moving on from there to coastal water forecasts, we've got small craft advisories here along the outer coastline of the Panhandle, southeast 25 to 30 on the south coast, east southeast 30, north coast seas about 14 feet, north 15 for Lynn Canal, and light north winds for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait southeast 15. And then for Wednesday, southeast 15 continues for Clarence Strait, and light south to southeast winds, central and northern inside waters, only 10 knots, seas 3 feet, 25 knots from the southeast on the south coast, and then gales here as you head north with gusts of 50 knots on the extreme north coast out of the east. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, north 20 knots, seas 3 feet, northeast 25 for the North Gulf Coast, the Barren Island areas with seas running 11 to 12 feet, northeast 20 knots, Kamishak Bay, southern Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, a little more northerly at 20 knots. And then looks like small craft advisories here north of the Forelands on Wednesday with 25 knot northeast winds, gales, southern Cook Inlet into Kamishak Bay, northeast turning east at 35, 13 to 14 foot seas, and east-southeast winds for the Barren Islands, western North Gulf Coast at 30 knots, and gales for the eastern North Gulf Coast, southeast 35 knots, and Prince William Sound. Look for those winds to kick up to sustained speeds of about 30 knots with seas building to 7 feet. Kodiak Island, northeast 25 knots tomorrow. And the same thing southwest of Sitkinak here. And for the Alaska Peninsula, east-northeast 25 to 30, so that's good for small craft advisories there. Bristol Bay, lighter, northeast at 20. And those pick up to 25 knots there in the bay on Wednesday. Otherwise, the peninsula, lighter winds out of the north, roughly 20 knots, seas still 12 feet on the Pacific side. And southeast 25 there on eastern Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, those winds turning east, increasing to 30 knots. And for the Fox Islands, tomorrow, small craft advisories, northeast 25 to 30, strongest there south of the islands with also the highest seas around 17 feet. And northeast 25 for Adak and Atka. And then winds lighten up here as you head west, 20 knots around Chitka and out in the western zones just west of 15 with 7 foot seas. And then those swing around to the southeast with that next system coming in. Not a real strong one, but it'll kick it up to small craft advisories, 30-knot winds, 12-foot seas, 15 knots here, say from Kiska Island over toward Adak, and then for Adak and Atka, north 25, 13 or 12-foot seas, and for the Fox Islands, north winds also at 30 knots with 13 or 9 to 15-foot seas. Southwest coast tomorrow, northeast, dry northeast winds, 15 to 20 knots, and 10 to 20 knots out St. Matthew Island and the Pribilofs. Southwest 20 for St. Lawrence Island, and west of 15 into Norton Sound. And then for Wednesday, those go back north again at 25 knots here for Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Island. Full gales here, northerlies coming up to 40 knots for the southwest coast and the Pribilofs, with seas building 11 feet along the coast, 16 feet for St. Paul and St. George, and north 30 for St. Matthew Island. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, lighter winds tomorrow, and out of the north, changing direction and diminishing 15 to 20 knots. Central coast swing around to the south at 15, pick it up to 20 on the west side, and then brisk wind advisories from Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales. And for Wednesday, those turn west-northwest and fall back down to 15 knots here from Wales to Cape Beaufort. Southwest 20 on the western and central coast, east 15 for the east side. And for tonight, this system pulls northward into the east central interior. Don't look for much precipitation here, really from the Copper River Basin on up across the eastern interior until you get up toward the Brooks Range there. Winter storm blizzard warning ends on the eastern coast, eastern Arctic coast by 10 p.m. Clearing skies, light winds, a little chilly tonight in the west, and Kodiak Island dry, mild, lows in the 40s for the Panhandle. And for tomorrow, sunny again, highs probably in the 60s in many areas there for the southeast coast with sunshine. It stays wet, but the rainfall a lot lighter with this weakening boundary of moisture here as it gets shoved back to the west, but high pressure over the interior makes for a mostly sunny day tomorrow. And then a trough brings the snow chances back in on Wednesday with even rain into the Panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.